Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jai Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Randhana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Randhana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parudika Charja Ashtotar Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parudika Charja Ashtotar Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantaraj srimadbhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta-vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Narayanam namaskritya Narang chaiva narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiri. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta prayesha bhadreshu Nityam bhagavata sevaya Bhagavatyuttama shloke Bhaktim bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 14th day of December 2018 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in Canto 4, the creation of the fourth order. Chapter 8, Dhruva Maharaj leaves home for the forest. Text number 43. Snattvanu savanam tasmin kalindya salile shive kritvochitani nivasan atmanak kalpitasanaha. Snattvanu savanam tasmin kalindya salile shive kritvochitani nivasan atmana kalpitasanaha. Snattvanu savanam tasmin kalindya salile shive kritvochitani nivasan atmana kalpitasanaha. Snattvanu snavanam tasmin kalindya salile shive kritvochitani nivasan atmana kalpitasanaha. Snattvanu savanam tasmin kalindya salile shive kritvochitani nivasan atmana kalpitasanaha. Snattvanu savanam tasmin kalindya salile shive kritvochitani nivasan atmana kalpitasanaha. Jesse, you can do it. Snattvanu savanam tasmin kalindya salile shive kritvochitani nivasan atmana kalpitasanaha. Snatva, after taking bath. Anusavanam, 3 times. Tasmin, in that. Kalindyaha, in the river Kalindi, the Yamuna. Salile, in the water. Shive, which is very auspicious. Kritva, performing. Uchitani, suitable. Nivasan, sitting. Atmanaha, of the self. Kalpita asanaha, having prepared a sitting place. Translation. Narada Muni instructed, my dear boy, in the waters of the Yamuna river, which is known as Kalindi, you should take 3 baths daily because the water is very auspicious, sacred, and clear. After bathing, you should perform the necessary regulative principles for Ashtanga Yoga, and then sit down on your asana or sitting place in a calm and quiet position. Purport. It appears from this statement that Dhruva Maharaj had already been instructed how to practice the 8-fold yoga system, which is known as Ashtanga Yoga. This system is explained in our Bhagavad Gita as it is, in the chapter entitled Dhyana Yoga. It is understood that in Ashtanga Yoga one practices settling the mind and then concentrating it on the form of Lord Vishnu, as will be described in the following verses. It is clearly stated here that Ashtanga Yoga is not a bodily gymnastic exercise, but a practice to concentrate the mind on the form of Vishnu. Before sitting on his asana, which is also described in the Bhagavad Gita, one has to cleanse himself very nicely in clear or sacred water thrice daily. The water of the Yamuna is naturally very clear and pure, and thus if anyone bathes there 3 times, undoubtedly he will be very greatly purified externally. Narada Muni therefore instructed Dhruva Maharaj to go to the bank of the Yamuna and thus become externally purified. This is part of the gradual process of practicing mystic yoga. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So there was some doubt whether this is taking place in the Satya Yuga, but I think we can state that it is taking place in the Satya Yuga. There's another where Prabhupada says it's taking place in the Satya Yuga, and here we have the instruction in the process of realization for Satya Yuga, namely Ashtanga Yoga, despite the fact that there's a kingdom and a king. So this begins Narada Muni's practical or systematic instructions to Dhruva on the process that he's going to undergo in order to realize God, in order to get a kingdom. That's his ultimate goal. But in the course of his practicing this Ashtanga Yoga practice, which has a large measure of bhakti in it, this is especially chanting the holy name in the form of Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, which we chant before every Bhagavatam class, and some meditation on the Lord in the heart, which Narada will explain the form of the Lord in the heart, as well as rudimentary deity worship. With all of that Dhruva Maharaj, his desires are purified. And in the end, he says, Swaman Katartosmi Vadangyache. He gets darshan of Vishnu, who comes down on a beautiful Garuda, and he's standing there right in front of Dhruva, and his meditation breaks, and he goes into ecstasy. And in his prayers, not recorded in Bhagavatam, but the most famous prayer is that line, my dear Lord, I don't want anything anymore. All I want is this darshan service to you. So this is the essential message of this whole pastime, is that in whatever age you're in, you practice the principles for that age, the Yuga Dharma, the Dharma of the age, with the purpose of, ideally, with the purpose of realizing Krishna and one's original relationship to Krishna. But even if you have some material motives, still practice it. Akama, sarvakamo, fa, mokshakamo, dadadi, tivrena, bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. Shukadeva Goswami explains to Pariksit in the second canto that whether you're free of all material desire, or you have all kinds of material desires, akama or sarvakama, or you want liberation, or you want a kingdom, or you want something else, by all means you have to practice intense devotional service. This word tivra is there. It can't be just superficial, but it has to be intense devotional service to the Supreme Person, as explained by the Parampara, by the revealed scriptures. It can't be some concocted understanding of God, or it can't be some tree or whatever you're worshiping. People worship all kinds of things. But if you actually worship the Lord in the authorized way, no matter what your internal state is, your desires or your desire for liberation, whatever, you'll be purified of it. It will turn into desire for pure bhakti. So I wanted to read a little section from in the next verse. Narada Muni continues instructions, and he gives more practical. He talks about pranayama there, and it's all Ashtanga Yoga, which, as Prabhupada says, is described in the Dhyana Yoga chapter of his Bhagavad Gita as it is. So in the 6th chapter, Krishna also begins from the beginning. This Ashtanga Yoga, each of the elements, is 8 of them, have their parallel in Bhakti Yoga. Just like this purification. Well, there's so much of that. There's Yama and Niyama. The first two limbs of the Ashtanga. Ashtanga means 8 limbs or 8 processes. The first 2 are called Yama and Niyama. Yama are the don'ts, and Niyamas are the do's. Prabhupada calls them the rules and the regulations. So the don'ts are the don'ts include in the Ashtanga Yoga practice, as Krishna says, no sex. Don't have no sex. Brahmacharya is complete in the Ashtanga Yoga practice. There's not really a place for Grihastha ashram amongst the yogis. They usually start the process after they leave the household and they go off to the forest alone. Alone, that's another thing. You have to be alone. You can't be with anyone. So there's a lot of don'ts, and there's also do's, cleanliness. Here, the rudimentary practice of just taking a bath in pure water. You can't help flinch if you know what the Kalindi is like now, what is called the Yamuna River in Vrindavan. It's a catastrophe. What has happened is that the actual Yamuna River, which comes down from the Himalayas, has been diverted north of Delhi into agricultural irrigation waters. So what's coming into the Yamuna, into the Vrindavan, is just, I hate to say it, but it's true, practically Delhi sewer water is coming there with all kinds of impurities, obviously, and foam and all kinds of things. There's been, you go, it's not pure and pristine like it was even 100 years ago, or a couple hundred years ago, what to speak of in Satya Yuga. So there's been huge marches, thousands of devotees, going to Delhi, trying to appeal to the government to remedy the situation. And there was supposedly some promise to do it. But the problem is there's billions of dollars involved now. You have this huge agricultural section that's, dependent on the water of the Yamuna for irrigation. So it's a sad problem, and there's not much you can do about it. But that's the fact. But the idea is you take your bath in pure waters, external cleanliness and internal cleanliness. Everything we do, the chanting, the seeing the deities, the regulation, just getting up early is purifying, is so important, internal purification. So Krishna describes this in summary in the 6th chapter, and in text 20 to 23, those 4 verses, he describes the result of it. And Prabhupada, in his purport, he talks about how all these results are really there for the bhakti yogi. The idea is that you get to the same place, or even a higher place, by bhakti yoga that you do by Ashtanga yoga. So in this section, here's what Krishna says. In the stage of perfection of Ashtanga yoga, called trance, samadhi, one's mind is completely restrained from material mental activities by the practice of yoga. This perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self, that's the cap as self, that's the supersoul in the heart, by the pure mind, and to relish and rejoice in the self. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth, and upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. By situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of the greatest difficulty. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. Now, one point to make here is that, as a general rule, every organism, at least that has some kind of consciousness, is trying to maximize his pleasure and minimize the pain. It's so axiomatic that it's like one of these duh things. Yeah, of course, But in the effort to do that on the material plane, you inevitably meet defeat. There's no question of doing it. Because on the material plane, your sources of pleasure, sense gratification, both gross and subtle, mental gratification also, they're dependent on so many things. The health of the body, for instance. If you want to enjoy good food or something, but you're sick, there goes that. And if you have some chronic disease that you can't eat, what you used to eat, it's a huge source of disappointment. I used to be able to eat ice cream and this and that and whatever. And now all I can have is applesauce or whatever, What a loss. Because all those desires are still in there. But the material energy is always constantly mutable. And your instrument for enjoying is very, very fragile, the material senses. So that's the nature of the material world. And as far as on the negative side, you're always trying to ward off problems, right? We have clothes, we have houses, because you have to have some shelter from the elements. It's too cold, it gets too hot, okay, we have the air conditioning and all this stuff. There's always an attempt to adjust it. And then there's these threefold miseries that are always threatening you. Adibhautic miseries, let's take those for a minute. I remember there was a play once I used to read back in the 60s. I was reading existential literature, I think it was Jean-Paul Sartre who wrote the play No Exit or something like that. Very depressing thing, The only line I remember from that play is, hell is other people. Can you imagine having a mentality like that? Well, let's bring as many devotees as possible, But because hell is, materialistic people. So we're constantly being affected. Some clique in Washington, is taking control of the government, and it's they all have roots in the petrochemical business, the oil industry. They said, now we can take all of these big, federal lands in the West that are put aside for some monument or whatever. We'll make them eligible for mining and drilling. And they do it. You had your place, and the air quality gets bad just because other people are changing the laws. What to speak of wars, people attacking you, a million different ways. So that's the nature of material life. You strive as hard as you can to reach a place of happiness and security and peace, and it's constantly being threatened and destroyed by time. Now, the way Uddhava prays, I love this prayer. Many of you have heard it a few times. Sukhi Bhakti Prabhu turned me onto it. He says, in the midst of this Uddhava Gita, there's not only the Bhagavad Gita, which is very famous, but there's the Uddhava Gita at the end of the Bhagavatam in the 11th canto, out of 12, in which Krishna instructs, this is the last instruction, the Uddhava, before Krishna leaves the planet and goes back to Goloka. And it takes many of the themes of the Bhagavad Gita, but expands on them. So just as Arjuna will ask periodic questions in the Bhagavad Gita, Uddhava is also asking periodic questions. And in this particular prayer, he's just encouraging Krishna to please go on speaking the Uddhava Gita. So he says, Dashtam janam sampatitam bilesmin, kalahina chuddha sukhoru tarsham, samudharayanam kripayapavaga vachobarasincha mahanubhava. So there's a bunch of metaphors in here. He says, this person, this unfortunate soul, he's taking the role of a conditioned soul like us. I've fallen into this deep well of the material world, which is like a hole in which a snake lives. You imagine, a big, huge snake, and you fall into that hole, you're threatened, it's dark, dirty. So, dashtam janam sampatitam. Sampatitam is completely fallen. Bile is a snake hole. So, what's the snake? The kalahina, the snake of time. I'm being bitten by the snake of time. It's pushing me toward destruction. And in spite of being in this situation, so dangerous and depressing and disturbing, chuddha sukhoru tarsham, I still have very great thirst for insignificant sense pleasure. This is the thing. Chuddha means insignificant. Sukha uru tarsham means extreme thirst or desire. So in this situation, I'm approaching you, my Lord, and said, Samudharayanam, please deliver me from this danger and lift me out of this well, this hole. How? Kripaya, by showing me great mercy and speaking your infallible words, sprinkling upon me the nectar of your infallible words, which bring liberation. Abhavagai, vachobirasincha mahanubhava, O great Lord. So the idea is that, there's so much in this one verse. First, there's this assessment of our situation. I've been studying the nature of prayer for this seminar I'm going to do with Roma Padmaraj in about a week in Chicago. So if you go to the Nectar of Devotion, there's a section called, I think, Submission. And the way it was edited, I think submission, okay, some humble submission. But actually submission in this case is called vigyapti. It means submitting an appeal. That's the submission. Just like you submit a petition, that's the submission. It doesn't have to do with, anyway, that's a dual meaning. So in this, it's analyzed, Rupa Goswami analyzed 3 parts of this, entreaty, really another best definition is entreaty. So entreaty has 3 different categories, sampratikatmaka, dainya bodhika, and lala shamayi. And although we don't know the names, we're familiar with them in our daily morning program. So sampratika is just regular prayers that we may submit, that we may ask, like Queen Kunti's prayers. Trayime ananya vishaya matir madhapate sakrit radhamud bhataradha gange vaugamadanvidi. O Madhava, please ever fill my mind with thoughts of thee, not any other kind. As Ganges torrent flows into the sea, let all my love flow constantly to thee. That's my little translation of it. So now Dainya Bodhika is an expression of humility and kind of self-recrimination. Dina, this word dina is very prominent in our philosophy, in the books. Dina means understanding one's wretched condition, fallen condition, just like Uddhava describes. I'm fallen in this well, and I'm attracted to material things, I'm impure, like that. Oftentimes the whole prayer or the whole statement will just be that. Just like we have this song, Prabhupada's favorite song, Hari Hari Vipale, Janma Gonaina. When you go through the whole song, it's just, he's calling out the Hari. It's not just like depression, where you're just saying, I'm so low, I'm useless, let me commit suicide. No, you're addressing Hari. The first words are Hari, Hari Hari Vipale. But you're confessing your fallen condition. I spent my whole life uselessly, without any fruit, absorbed in material things, and now in this old age, you don't even get to a prayer. Prayer meaning a request. The ordinary, understanding of prayer is that you approach the Lord, you may glorify, and then you ask for something, which is perfectly bona fide. So there's no prayer part of it, there's just this Dainya Bodhika. But because it's addressed to Krishna, it sets up the mood for a prayer. And oftentimes that Dainya Bodhika element will be in the prayer, just like it is in this Uddhava prayer. He's saying, I'm so fallen. I'm fallen into this dark well. I understand, theoretically, that I'm doomed by time, that my situation in this body is limited, certainly. But still, despite that, I'm still very strongly attracted to sense gratification, which is what got me in this situation in the first place. So then comes the prayer part, and this one is not just pure Dainya Bodhika, it's also the prayer. Now please speak to me, your nectarian instructions, enlighten me, so that I can become free from this material desire, and which is keeping me in the well, and I can go back to you. It's a very wonderful prayer. And there are many prayers like that. So back to our meditation here. Yeah, Prabhu. Oh, yeah, right. Thank you for reminding me. Before you said anything, I thought you were going to say that. Lala Shamayi. Now, Lala Shamayi is mentioned in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Prabhupada talks about in Nectar Devotion, is an ardent prayer for a specific service, a specific relationship with Krishna. And it's mentioned by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his commentary there that this is generally offered by those who have reached the bhava stage. In other words, they're hankering for their swarup siddhi, a specific relationship with Krishna. But the fact is that Prabhupada gave us these prayers. This Tulsi prayer is Lala Shamayi all the way. And it has that element of Dainya. Dina Krishna Dasekoi, the last stanza. Dina Krishna Dase. It's not, the devotees think that this one or another was written by, this wretched or lowly servant prays, right? The Dina. So that's, in other words, you feel in a helpless, wretched condition, and you're ardently praying for service to Tulsi, one of your maidservants, and then be able to always see the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna, to swim along, to float along in the ocean of love of Godhead. That's Lala Shamayi all the way. So it's not that we can't have that. We can also, even in our sadhana bhakti condition here, a lowly condition, we can chant those prayers, although we have to understand that we're not yet on that platform. But they can be very enlivening. Prabhupada gave us the Tulsi prayer. It's the highest prayer. You're praying to be a servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna. So, now we're back to our yoga process here. So, Dhruva Maharaj is being given this process that's basically like what Krishna gives in the Bhagavad Gita. And, but it has all these elements of bhakti mixed in with the Ashtanga. It's just like Kapila Dev's teachings in the third canto, and actually just like Krishna's teachings in the Bhagavad Gita. This is not an impersonal, obviously, description of Dhyana Yoga, although there are a lot of elements in it before you get to the bhakti part. But what does he want us to meditate on? On him. There's a verse here where, with your mind fully fixed on me, which Prabhupada, of course, focuses on in the purport, is that everything leads to bhakti in the Bhagavad Gita. That's the real message. So what I wanted to get to is here, where he says, relish and rejoice, his ability to see the self by the pure mind. So this is a revelation in the heart, to see the self, the super soul, Or, if your meditation is on Krishna, to see Krishna in your heart. He's also there, no question about it. To see the Shyama Sundar form, Premanjanacharita Bhakti Vilojanena. So what happens when you relish and rejoice in the self and seeing? In that joyful state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness. Now we know that boundless transcendental happiness can only come when there's a service element to it. It's not just meditation. You know, that's of course kind of Shanta Ras, if you will. But I mean, at the end of this chapter, he says the greatest yogi is one who's always thinking of me and serving me, and rendering transcendental with great faith. So, but the idea is that the boundless transcendental happiness. I mean, just try to imagine what that is. It's transcendental beyond the bonds of matter, beyond what we would experience on the material plane, which is there's always a beginning and an end, as he says in the previous chapter. Therefore, the wise do not take their pleasure there. The very pleasures that you get in this world through the senses, or the mind, which is the sixth sense, are the cause of your misery. Sangsparjaja boga dukkha yone evate. I always thought this is one of the most revolutionary statements in the whole Bhagavad Gita. Because here we are as in a society, if you want to call it that, you know, in the modern Western world, all over the world really, where that's all that people know. Basically, that's the kind of pleasure that people know, and that is taught to them, that is glorified in all the media, and it works. You know, if you eat something nice, or you have sex or something, there's an intense pleasure there. That's actually naturally going to keep you going in that direction. You're helpless. You're helpless in the throes of illusion and without an intervention from someone was on a higher plane. That's what Prabhupada gave. He came to America to give an intervention in the world completely addicted to sense gratification, which in the obvious forms of hard drugs causes destruction, right? But even in the softer way of just addiction to ordinary sense gratification, sex life, even material family life, ultimately produces extreme suffering. Birth, old age, disease, and death, and the threefold miseries. So the intervention comes from someone on a higher plane, experiencing a higher happiness, and who can not only he can explain the philosophy by it and give us the means to realize it. And that's what Prabhupada gave. And that's what all the acharyas give. It's exactly like, you know, someone coming down from a higher plane and giving us the truth. So the same thing is here given in the sixth chapter here. Rejoice in the self, seeing the super soul. When it's established, he never departs from the truth, and the gaining he thinks there's no greater gain. No matter what you gain materially, you know, if you gain it, it becomes stale. You know, look at these billionaires. You know, just forget about all of the accoutrements and everything. Just compare their visage to the faces of the blissful devotees. Who would you rather be? I told this story, I'm not going too far afield, of this one billionaire guy who's made his money, you know, running gambling houses in this island off China. Multi-billions, you know, there's about 100 people like that in the world now. And he's very involved in politics, you know, especially supporting the Jews and that's and that, you know. Okay. But the guy is one of the most ugly people you'll ever see. I mean, it's like he gave up, you know, because they have all facility, you know, but Botox and everything. This guy just gave up, you know. He gave up on that part of the opulences. You know, he went with the money and forgot about the beauty part, you know. But it's like, how happy can you be in that situation? You know, just look in the mirror. But the point is that, and then there's this foreboding, because you know it's temporary. You know, all of these guys, they generally make their billions in their 50s or 60s, and the 70s are coming, the 80s are coming, you know, the body's breaking down, the death is coming, and you know. You have to have at least a subliminal understanding that all of the terrible things you've done to get to that platform, you really can't make $1 billion without stepping all over a whole bunch of people. That may come back to haunt you. You know, maybe karma is for real, you know. In other words, it's just a cul-de-sac. It's It's a false way of trying to be happy on materially. And the people who are supposedly being able to enjoy it the most can't really enjoy it. They're also have so much anxiety. So, but here it says, boundless transcendental happiness. You think there's no greater gain. You're never shaken. Now here's the other side. Because to really be happy, you have to be situated in this source of, ever-increasing boundless bliss. But there also has to be the other side. It's not going to end. And you're not going to suffer the threefold miseries and all that stuff anymore. And that's what he says. One is never shaken even in the midst of the greatest difficulty. We have the example of Prahlad and more modern Haridas Thakur and others who are really situated on that plane. And even though material energy is going to knock you, you're not shaken. You have that unshakable inner consciousness that you're able to rely on. And ultimately, of course, the body will go, and you remain in that consciousness. The very experience of death doesn't shake you, which is the ultimate shaking thing. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. Now, this is a description of Ashtanga Yoga, but as I mentioned, Bhakti Yoga brings you to the same place. And it brings you practically in this age. Any one of us can do it. None of us can go out. I certainly couldn't imagine doing it, going out alone into the Himalayas and facing all that craziness, I mean, you have to really give Radhanath Swami a nod, He actually went and did that. He did this Ashtanga Yoga. Of course, he gave it up and took the Bhakti, which is a good example. But it's very, very rare that one's going to even try it. And even if you try it, it's very, very rare to be able to succeed on this platform. But it's not rare for someone to take to the process of Bhakti. It's perfectly compatible. You can do it in a big crowd. The more the merrier. Imagine if we had 100 people chanting Hare Krishna in this room. On Sunday we have some more. It's not like you have to be alone. There's an aspect where you be alone and meditate, but most of it is in association with others. Satam prasangam mamavirya sambhita. Lord Kapila Dev says that getting together and glorifying the Lord, this is great. If everyone's doing it sincerely and it's a pure sangha, then you develop shraddha, faith, and rati, attraction to the Lord, and bhakti, pure attraction. And the next verse he says, this is rijubir. This is the easiest yoga process. So who wouldn't take it if you get to the point where you're getting boundless transcendental happiness? So this is what is happening with Dhruva. He starts out with this impossible to achieve material desire, which he eventually does achieve because Krishna do the impossible. But certainly to achieve it on the material plane, for this little boy to achieve, a kingdom greater than, not his grandfather, but his great-grandfather, Lord Brahma, who lives for 311 trillion years. I mean, it's kind of a kid's, I want to be Superman. Why can't I be Superman? Well, Dhruva actually went out to the forest to become Superman. In other words, his childish tantrum, so to speak, Narada Muni engaged that, and because he was determined, his very name Dhruva means fixed and determined. That determination took him in 6 months, which is nothing in Satya Yuga especially, to a full realization of God, of Krishna. So the motto of the moral of the story is that if we just can screw up enough determination and enthusiasm and patience to follow the regular principles of bhakti as given by Srila Prabhupada, which are very, they're feasible. Thousands have done it in the past, are doing it today. Then we can make great advancement toward this platform that's spoken of in the Bhagavad Gita. It can be done. And, the wonderful thing about it, I mean, there's kind of a fail-safe, meaning that if you fail, even in this effort, you're still safe. There's no loss or diminution. For all the billionaires, there's huge loss and diminution. I'd heard a lecture today where for all the material, the Prabhupada is saying that those atheists who don't believe in God, deride God, they meet him at death. They want to see God. Prabhupada would always, they would, Prabhupada would travel all over and people would ask him, especially in the West, have you seen God? And Prabhupada said, yes. Can you please show him to me? Can you show him to me? And Prabhupada said, you don't have the eyes to see. You don't have the eyes to see God. But I can give you the method by which you can get the eyes to see God, So the process of devotional service, especially for late beginners, if you're born into it and you're trained from childhood, you have a much better chance. But most of us haven't, I guess none in this room. And so you may not succeed. Try as you might. We should try as hard as we can. Chant Hare Krishna, follow the 4 regular principles, do what we have to do, pray. But if we don't, then there's no loss of diminution. You begin in the next life where you left off. This is the wonderful thing about spiritual advancement, is that the spirit, it adheres to the spirit, the soul, not the mind and not the body. Certainly anything that you achieve physically or in relation to the body is going to be taken away. And you don't know what's going to happen with your mind, what situation that's going to take you into. So it's all just, you're helpless in the bonds of the material energy. But if you can get the favor of the person who's in control of the material energy, then you have a good shot to advance nicely toward the ultimate goal. And even if it takes a few births, hey, we've been doing this for millions and millions and trillions of births. So that's a very good encouragement. Not that we should slack off, we should try as hard as possible, because if we don't go back to Godhead and come back again to material, there's going to be a lot of suffering. Being in the womb and birth itself, And who knows what this world is going to be like in 40, 50, 60 years when we try to take birth again, or less. Everything I'm reading is that this is doomed. There's a I'm sure you follow this stuff that's going on with the environment and with the climate change, climate catastrophe, really. And it's there are so many feedback loops that if this happens, it just gets faster and faster. Haribol, thanks for coming, Prabhu. And the warming increases faster and faster. And we don't know, the things. And it turns out now that all the insects are dying. 80, 90% of the insects. I've noticed it. Just in terms, I used to get these big date bugs, like the big cockroaches, in my apartment. I don't get them anymore. They're not there. Even those bugs, But there's all kinds of good bugs like bees. Who we need to pollinate things, and we can't live without the bugs. But somehow or other, with all that we're doing, it's definitely human caused. The heat and taking away their natural habitats and all of the pesticides. It's a disaster. So that's going on. But where do you read about? Who's really worried about it? It's not a big panic. It should be. So. Who knows what's going to happen? We see this, unexpected calamities are happening all over the world, all over this country. And so, the idea is that there's, the urgency that's always given in the Bhagavatam. Turnam yatena patena namityavad. This verse Prabhupada would quote all the time. It would say, Labdva sudurlama vidam bahasam bhavante manushimata damanichamapi yadhira. Those 2 lines should create a revolution in your consciousness. We've labdva sudulamam. You have attained the very difficult to attain human form of life after many, many, many births coming up through the species. How many hundreds, thousands of years? Okay, here we are in the human form, and it is a special form, manusham artadam, because it can give the actual goal of life. You can understand with the brain how to act, not just by the impulse of the senses, but by higher intelligence. But like all forms, it's anityam, it's temporary. And so one has to be dhira, one has to be sober-minded and consider. And then, having considered, turnam yateta. Without delay, turnam, strive. Without delay, strive. Like you hear about Krishna's Kaviraj, he had this dream where Nityananda, Balaram came to him in the dream, said, go to Vrindavan, you'll find everything. Woke up, started, left his home, left his family, took sannyas instantaneously. That's a great example, a high example. Same thing with Rupa and Sanatan. When they met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they just left. They were right and left hand of the king. They had all advantages, but they left in a minute and took, So that kind of determination has to be there. As long as you haven't died yet, anumritya yavat. Anumritya means death is following you, behind you all the time. We forget about it, but it's right there, But as long as you haven't died, and you still have your wits about you and your senses, then strive immediately. For what? Nikshayasa, for the ultimate good. For that which this boundless happiness that is spoken of in the Bhagavad Gita, 6:20-23. Strive for that. Because after all, in all the other forms that he mentioned at the beginning of the verse, we've already experienced all varieties of sense gratification. From going up to the heaven, to Indra, down to the little ant and worm and stool. We've experienced it. So why chew the chewed, chew the chewed? You're just prolonging the agony. You've experienced that also. Strive for the ultimate platform of happiness, eternal happiness and bliss. So this is, it's even more pertinent today. When there's such a mass catastrophe facing the planet, and it's not, 100 years from now, it's more like 10, 20 years from now. Things radically change. I mean, I spent 6 years in Miami Beach back in 83 to 89, working on the Bhagavatam, helping to finish up the Bhagavatam. And, Miami Beach is like right on the ocean, obviously, and the elevation is like, 1 foot. There's no mountain. All of Florida is like that, but really, but they built up all these hotels. The rich come down. They've invested in the mafia. Everything. There's all kinds of hotels on the beach, and we had one of them. Somehow, Hare Krishna had one for 6 years, 7 years. So I lived in there, and that's where we put out the Bhagavatam. So we never had this phenomenon that they have now, which is that perfect blue sky, but the streets are flooding from the tides. The water it's higher. Yes, the oceans are already rising, even a few inches, and the whole place is built on this limestone. It's not solid rock under there, and the water just seeps through and then gets up on the roads. There's flooding on the road. So what to do? Well, we got to have. Did you hear about this? Yeah, it happens all the time. So the solution is, we have to petition the government, to have regulation and stop, all the carbon burning and all this. No. We're going to spend billions of dollars to raise the roads. This is the idea. In other words, some palliative. The sign is there. The water is rising. But they have some expensive solution, because billions of dollars have been invested in that real estate. And really, people shouldn't live on there anymore. Just like how these hurricanes come in North Carolina, But no, they have a means by which we can keep enjoying, just spend a lot of money and keep doing what we're doing. And that's why I wanted to bring up this, it's getting late. In the 7th chapter, Krishna has this key verse, many devotees know it, Bahunam jamanamante jnanavamam papadyate. After many, many births of cultivating knowledge, real knowledge, one surrenders to me, understanding that Vasudeva is everything. In other words, one becomes a devotee. So the very next verse, which Prabhupada also quoted a lot, on the other hand, kamais taista riddha papadyante anya devata. Those whose real knowledge has been stolen by material desires, riddha jnana, they surrender to other gods besides me. And then they're controlled by their own natures and things, and they worship the gods, and ultimately they're cheated, because whatever they get from the gods really come from me, and it's all temporary. This is, But in that verse, he describes the kamais taista, that by too much material desire, your real knowledge is stolen away, and then you worship other gods. Now, these days, many people don't worship anything, but they are worshiping. They're worshiping mammon. They're worshiping material wealth and so forth. And this is what we see today. There's no question. There's no question that all of this pumping, this burning of fossil fuels is suicide. It's suicide for the planet. But the guys who are controlling things, from those who are running the big petrochemical companies to the politicians who are bought off by them, you say, some of them willfully, convince themselves that it's not happening, or that I'll be dead by the time it happens, or who cares? We got so much money invested. But whatever it is, they're keeping going down the same road, even quicker, and the whole world is being victimized by it. So that's the situation we're in. It's the adi-bhautic miseries, and going into adi-daivik. So the solution, as always, is to be more serious in our sadhana and really get purified and give people this knowledge as much as possible. Because this is the knowledge that can really break through all of the illusion and fog that's being pumped out by the powers that be. They're taking the whole planet into ultimate disaster. Yeah. Anyway, that's the situation, and it's all there in the Bhagavad Gita. By lust and by material desire, your real knowledge is covered, and then you accept untruth for truth, and you act on that, and you take yourself and whoever you influence and affect with you. So it's the same old, war between the asuras and the suras, and we're on the sura side, and we have access to this knowledge. So sorry to get so polemical about it, but any fun. I guess it's too late. Go ahead. Yeah, one or two questions.
So you were saying more towards the beginning that we, well, not we, but you were talking about the following of the Yuga Dharma, and in Sati Yuga, that being Ashtanga Yoga, which is a meditation on Vishnu. But in some places in Shastra, it says, don't even worry about the worship of Vishnu, just worship Swayam Bhagavan Krishna. So it seems that the Yuga Dharmas of previous ages don't give Krishna bhakti. So why is that? Or can you explain that? If that's
well, they do in rare cases, but you're right that there's less opportunity. One of the things is this idea that Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga is hey, praya nalpaishak sabja, you don't live very long, and you're misguided and unlucky and always disturbed. It's obviously for this kind of Ashtanga Yoga. Or for spiritual life in general, without the special dispensation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. See, this particular Kali Yuga that we're in is because Lord Chaitanya came, Krishna came, and then Lord Chaitanya came. So there's this, Kali Dosha Najay Rajan, this Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults, meaning ocean of ways in which you can get off the track and get, and not even think about spiritual life. But there's this one great quality, and that is that by chanting the holy name, you can achieve the ultimate goal. And the ultimate goal of chanting Hare Krishna, as you mentioned, is pure love of Godhead. Liberation comes, behind it. What you're describing here in the 6th chapter, in spades. The ultimate happiness and bliss is described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the levels of ecstasy and the details. So the point is that Krishna Bhakti is the highest form of devotional service to Vishnu. It's a form in which Krishna covers all of that magnificent, awe-inspiring, and really frightening power that he has, and reveals the ultimate sweetness of Vrindavan, his own home, his intimate home, where he likes to live in that original form. The original form of God is actually Krishna. And Vishnu is an expansion for a specific purpose. Vishnu in the heart for creation, the Vishnu forms, you have the Mahavishnu and so forth. Ultimately, Chirodaksha Vishnu expands as the super soul in everyone's heart. So this is Krishna in kind of an official form. Very much, very worshipable and powerful and all-knowing. All attractive, don't get me wrong. And we're going to have a description here, and it was even more of a description in Kapila Dev's teachings. And Vishnu is also very merciful and kind, and the well-wishers, Surit, But you don't find those lila in Vishnu. There's these 4 unique qualities of Krishna that aren't present in any Vishnu form, what to speak of Shiva or what to speak of the living entities. Sarva Bhuta Chamatkara Lila Kalola Vadadi. He's an ocean full of waves of lila or pastimes, which are the most wonderful and enchanting and enthralling, things that are ever going on. Sarva Bhuta Chamatkara, they produce great wonder. He's surrounded by the gopis. Vishnu is not. He's surrounded by the gopis, who are at the highest levels of, ecstatic love for him. What is that? Mandita Priya Mandala. Tridigun, no. Lila Atulya Madhura Prema, with unequaled and unsurpassed sweet love. Mandita Priya Mandala. He's surrounded by the rasa dance and everything. That's not there with Vishnu. He has the goddess of fortune, but it's much more official. And then the flute. Vishnu doesn't play the flute. But that flute sound, which Prabhupada says, and this is something that you may have not read, or if you did, you may have forgot. And there's that flute sound, which you know how attractive that is. It enters into the minds, to the ears of the gopis, and they're forcibly attracted to come, so, enthralling. That is manifest in this world as the holy name. And that's why when you chant Hare Krishna, you get it, and you hear nicely, you're attracted to Krishna. Because it's that flute manifest as the holy name that's drawing you to Krishna. Tridagun manasakashi murali kalakujita. Kalakujita means this very warbling, all attractive sound. And the last is asamanodva rupa shri vismapata charachara. That his unequaled and unsurpassed beauty and opulence, even greater than Vishnu, vismapata charachara, astounds all the moving and non-moving beings. So that's the original form of Krishna. And it's very rare. You have to come to that point. It's dainya again, feeling oneself completely neglected and just totally qualified. Just like this song. And I'll end with this because I know it's getting late. Krishna Bhavandam Vande Manmanasamadakadamapa Yadintapotapankachamakadandeya. This is a song. Prabhupada quotes the translation in the purport in the first canto. It says, "O Krishna, dearest Lord, I bow to you," and then entreat, is entreaty. "Please place the bee of my restless mind in the honey of your lotus feet." So he's asking Krishna to do it. He says, "I can't do it. My mind is too restless. It's just like a bee, like the bee of my restless mind." And then in the subsequent stanzas, he's explaining all kinds of reasons why he's unqualified. Even Brahma can't fix his mind on your lotus feet. He doesn't get that vision. Yet despite all that, and who am I compared to Brahma, I've heard of your compassion, your endless compassion, so I'm still praying to you, please fix it. Despite great effort, I've tried like anything, I've gotten not a drop of prema. That's the next verse. But because I've heard of your great power, and you can make it possible, please give me this thing. See, so this mood, you're not going to find in Satya Yuga. I'm living for 100,000 years. In other words, it's very difficult to attain that kind of real sense of helplessness and dainya. That's the advantage of the Kali Yuga. We're so low, we live so short, we're so disturbed that our only hope is calling out to Krishna constantly to please save me. I'm in this horrible well, and then place me as an atom at your lotus feet. That's what Lord Chaitanya taught. So that's the short answer, is that Krishna Bhakti, and it's not absent elsewhere, but is possible that it be a very widespread, in this age, because of Lord Chaitanya's teachings and his followers. And we have to stop. Do you have one more thing? Okay, we later. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.